What is going on, guys? Welcome to The Reformed Reader, the channel where we review different forms of media through the lens of a Christian who is under the authority of the scriptures. My name is Josh, and today we are going to be doing a book review of Howling by Christopher Ruocchio. Now, before we jump into the review, let's go over what is this book about. Hadrian Marlowe is lost. For half a century, he has searched the farther suns for the lost planet of Vorgosis, hoping to discover a way to contact the elusive alien Cielson. He has pursued false leads for years among the barbarian Normans as captain of a band of mercenaries. But Hadrian remains determined to make peace and bring an end to nearly 400 years of war. Desperate to find answers, Hadrian must venture beyond the security of the Solan Empire and among the extrasolarians who dwell between the stars. There he will face not only the aliens he has come to offer peace, but contend with creatures that once were human, with traitors in his midst, and with a meeting that will bring him face to face with the oldest enemy of mankind. If he succeeds, he will usher in a peace unlike any in recorded history. If he fails, the galaxy will burn. Alright guys, so the way that I normally structure my reviews is I go over the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good being the things about the book that I enjoyed, the bad being the things that I didn't enjoy so much, and these are preferential things, maybe a character I didn't like or the setting, those kinds of things. But then I go over the ugly, which is what could be some sin that is steeped into this work that might hold a Christian back from picking it up, and I break that down into 5 categories. But before we jump into the actual review, I want to just go over that there will be light spoilers in here. Light spoilers meaning this is book 2 in a series of soon to be 7 books and numerous novellas. So yeah, there's going to be some light spoilers here. And depending on your definition of spoiler, maybe we've already gone over some. Like, guess what? Hadrian is still alive from book 1. And for some people are like, well, that's a spoiler. It's not a spoiler. There's 7 books in the series. So maybe it is a spoiler to you. I don't know. But there will be light spoilers in here. But for the most part, I will try to keep it spoiler free. So if you haven't read this book and you have read book 1, then you'll be fine. If you haven't read book 1 at all, and you're going into this review, I mean, there might be some light things in here, but I'm not going to go over any heavy spoilers. I don't really know how else to describe those. It's pretty subjective. Also, as an aside, for those of you that want to see a really great video on spoilers, I'll have linked somewhere right in here, I think, a video with David over at 4 corners of the page and Sam over at iSamwise talking about spoilers. This is a great discussion, and it's sort of adjacent to this because, like I said, this is a review of a sequel to a book. So just know that before we jump into it. With that out of the way, let's go over the good. What were some things about this book that I enjoyed? Man, there is a ton. There's a ton. A few things. If you enjoyed book 1, but you didn't buy into the hype, or you were like, yeah, it was fine. This book is definitely the one that I think will send you over the edge. And I think that's pretty common. I think a lot of people have said that on YouTube as of late, that book 2 is really where the story starts to shine. I mean, even Christopher Ruocchio himself says out of the first 3 books that this is his favorite, and he gave numerous reasons why, but I can see why. I'll just say that. So if you read book 1, you know that we spent a long portion of the book on one planet in one sort of, not just setting, but even the atmosphere or the attitude of the story was kind of, I don't want to say one note, but it was a little bit. It was a lot of Hadrian kind of wallowing in his sorrows or, complaining about his circumstances, those kinds of things. This is very different. So this is leaning much more into the actual space opera. Now, I will say this, and maybe I'll be one that is, an outlier here, where I will say that book 2 will not have the same impact if you haven't read book 1, because I've mentioned as of late that I would call myself a moments reader, and man, oh man, does this book have some moments. So before I'm just,
I may talk, squirrel.
I want to break down some of the things that I really enjoyed about this. Number 1 is our main character, Hadrian. Now, if you don't like Hadrian, if you read book 1 and you don't like Hadrian, I don't really know what to tell you. He's not just our predominant character, he's and primary character, he's the sole focus of the story. So if you don't like Hadrian's story, you're probably not going to be too thrilled with the series. But if you like Hadrian's story, you're going to love this book. So obviously, Hadrian, he had a ton of character depth in this one, especially in consideration to book one. Now, I don't want it to seem like that I'm just being a downer on book one because I enjoyed book one. I actually think book one was one of the best science fiction books that I have read at the time. But it's because most of the science fiction books that I read tend to focus more on concept and less on character. And so, as far as character development goes, I thought there was more character development in Empire of Silence than there is in every Blake Crouch book that I've read. Tons of other different science fiction. I mean, most of the Star Wars books, the story isn't really based on the character, with some exceptions. Most of the time, it's based on the concept or the plot, but not really a character focused story. This is not that. This is a character story. Now, this is other things in a big way, but this is very much the story of Hadrian Marlowe. So the characters are great. He, Volka, even Basander Lynn was a really cool character. I wasn't so crazy about Captain Smythe, I think was her name. She seemed kind of like one note for me, but like Basander Lynn was really cool. But man, let me just tell you guys, without getting too spoilery here, and if this is too spoilery for you, then I guess you click off the video. But this guy right here, Karn Sagara, super cool character. Now, there's a character pretty early on. I think it's like chapter 2, maybe 3. He's called the Painted Man. I thought was a really cool character. He's not in the book very much, but Christopher Rocchio has said that so many people have been like, "Oh, give me more of the Painted Man. He's such a cool character." He was a precursor to Karn Sagara's character. That was the idea. It was to introduce this concept of this type of person, using that term loosely, I guess. Karn Sagara's character is wild. It's out of this world right now. It's unique. And that's really saying something when it comes to science fiction and fantasy. So the characters are really, really cool. The setting is great because you're not secluded to one section. There's a lot of space travel here. There's not just space travel like jumping from world to world, but there's actually quite a bit of time spent on the spaceships themselves. The first probably quarter of the book is spent on the main ships that Hadrian and his crew or whatever, the people that are with him, are on. And so that was really neat to get to see, not just it explain what these ships are and how massive they are, but then it also explains why they are the way they are. And so that was cool. But then we also get to jump around a little bit. You're not jumping around every chapter or anything like that, but you do get to visit some different places with different settings. And so it never felt stale. So character setting was great. The pacing to me was excellent. This is definitely more of a slow burn story. I'm not saying it's slow. I don't think it's slow, but I do think it is a slower story in comparison to a lot of the other books, sci-fi and fantasy that I've read. But it is because you're really diving deep into these characters. And so with that, the author really wants you to see this nuance within the characters. So in order to convey that to us, we have to be kind of steeped in some of the day-to-day life of these characters, and it makes us care, and that matters. But let me just go ahead and tell you. So not only was the pacing good, because yes, it picked up at times and it slowed down at times. And so you had those real high octane moments, but then you had that time where you could really exhale and just kind of relax, just so that he could throw you back into another scene. But let me just tell you, the plot of this story, the plot behind this is awesome. It is so awesome. My friend Matt actually mentioned, he's like, I think this is probably the greatest science fiction story since Star Wars. And I'm only in book 2, and I can see where he's coming from. So, man, the good, I can't talk enough about the good. And let me just tell you guys, for you guys that want a satisfying ending, I have never read an ending like this. The end of this book is awesome. It is so good. So, I said that I tend to be a moments reader, and like the last 200 pages is like, you can either say that it's chock full of moments or it's one really big one. Man, there's times where you want to fist pump, where it makes the hair stand up on the back of your neck or on your arms, gives you goosebumps, or, there's some really like gut wrenching moment. I mean, it's pretty much every kind of emotion that you can feel. I mean, Christopher Rocchio just smacks you with them the last 200 pages, every one of them. And so the ending of this book it's one of the best endings that I have ever read. It is so good, so perfect. And I really want to go into spoilers, but I can't.
And, I'm not sure what to do with my hands.
So maybe I'll do that some other time. Maybe I'll have a discussion with some of you guys about this book, because man, it is wild. So I mean, the good, there is just a ton of it. I mean, there's just a ton of it. I think every page was intentional. I think every line was intentional. Masterful. It was masterfully written. This book was. So with that out of the way, let's go over the bad. What are some things about this book that I didn't care for? And guys, if I'm just being completely frank with you guys, I don't think there's anything in here that I didn't enjoy. There was a couple of moments where I thought we were lingering a little too long, but it wasn't like I wasn't quite there yet. It was like, okay, if we stay here much longer, it's going to be too long. And then something would happen. That was perfect. So I do think for you guys, because again, this is subjective, the preferential things, but maybe for some of you guys, you might think, okay, maybe we stayed here a little too long. Maybe this discussion went a little long, but I mean, after coming off of reading Count of Monte Cristo, this was a breeze. I mean, I don't think there was I really don't see anything negative in here that I could find. Now, I'm also not opening the book and looking at it and going, let me find some stuff that I can complain about. I'm not that kind of reader. Believe it or not, I want to enjoy the books that I read. And so unless something's kind of glaring, unless, something is included in the book, that the kind of things you guys know that I detest, that pulls me out of the story, I'm probably not going to notice much. Now, I will say that some people complain about, so I'm going to kind of play devil's advocate a little bit here, but some people complain that because this story is written from the perspective of Hadrian, he's writing his autobiography, that you kind of know what happens, because he doesn't die. Because, spoiler alert, again, maybe for some of you, I don't think it is, but he tells you at the beginning of the first book exactly what's going to happen, exactly why he's telling the story, and who he is, and why he's writing the story in the first few pages. And so some people think that that's a negative. I actually think it's really cool. On top of that, it's really neat to see that he's writing about the events that have already occurred. It's really cool to see that, because there are times where I'm like, what is about to happen? And then I have to remind myself, oh wait, he wrote this story. Like, of course he got out of this situation because he wrote the story. But let me tell you, Christopher Rocchio writes it so well that I forget a lot. And I will say, for those of you that have read this book already, and you know what I'm talking about if you've read it, but there's a particular scene where I'm like, okay, what just happened? Like, I'm not even done with book 2, and there's 5 more books after this. Like, what in the world? And then obviously you keep reading, and it's wild. But some people complain about that. I didn't. I thought it was great. As far as it's hilarious that I'm going over the bad section, I'm just talking about the things that I liked. That should tell you how much I enjoyed this book. But I don't think anybody's going to find anything here to dislike. Maybe some of the dialogue between some certain characters, there's sort of like an in-between world, like where Hadrian and his crew have to travel to a certain place so that they can get to another place, and sort of that in-between spot right there. Some people have complained that it was unnecessary. I didn't see it as that, but I mean, maybe somebody could. Again, I thought it was absolutely necessary because I thought it was necessary for character growth, that character development. Some events took place there that changed the way that our characters thought about certain things. So, yeah, as far as preferential things, the bad, it just ain't there, guys. It's just not there. So, this leads me to the ugly, which is what could be some sin that is steeped into this book that might hold a Christian back from reading it. Now, again, I'll break this down into 5 categories and I rate them out of 10, 10 being the most severe, starting with violence and brutality. Now, violence and brutality, I'm going to give this a solid 7. This book is pretty violent and it's way more brutal than book 1. There are some really violent scenes here. There are some really brutal scenes here. The Cielsen, they don't play around. They don't play around. I would almost say, I'm not even going to almost say it, I'm going to say it. I would say that there are some scenes in here near the end that could even lean and probably do lean into some cosmic horror type stuff. Again, if you've read the book, I think you know what I'm talking about. Arenado, if that's how you pronounce it, he was brutal. Definitely some violent and brutal aspects of the book for the most part. So if I'm going like, what does the book kind of sit at consistently? I'd say it's like maybe a 3 or a 4. It's not super brutal or violent. It's just moving the plot forward. But when it does get brutal and violent, it gets pretty brutal and violent. And so that's why I said it's probably, I would put this at a 7. I wouldn't quite put it at an 8 for me personally, because when I get about to the 8 range, that's when I start kind of contemplating of whether or not I should be entertained by this. I don't think this ever crossed that line. So if you're worried about having to put it down because of the violence and brutality, I don't think it's in here, but there are definitely a couple of scenes in particular that really shock the reader. So that's why I gave it a 7. All right, category 2 is going to be sexually explicit content. Now for this, I gave this a 4. Now I'm being a little more liberal with my score here. I'm being a little more liberal with my score here as far as it being a 4. It's probably less than that, but I'm trying to be, maybe that's being conservative, I don't know. But I'm trying to be more extreme or more severe with my scores for you guys, because there is a scene here. There's an intimate scene between a couple of characters that does fade to black, but it's a slow fade to black. I guess that's the best way that I can describe it. Other than that, it's not in here. There's not really any talk of any kind of sexual content whatsoever, but there is one scene where it's pretty early on where, a couple of characters get pretty intimate, and then it kind of discusses like them about to be intimate, and then it's like, and end of scene. And so it's less of a fade, I guess it's less of a fade to black to like an abrupt stop, which again, I appreciate. It doesn't need to be in here. I get what he was doing. I get what, was being conveyed to us. So that's why I put it at a 4, because maybe for some people that is extreme. I don't think it was, but that's just my opinion. But I think that's why you're here. So there you go, because this is all subjective anyway. So for sexually explicit content, I did give it a 4. Okay, so this leads me to category 3, which is language. Now, language does include blasphemy. And so for this book in particular, I'm going to give it another 4. Because there is some language here, and it's our English language. It's English expletives. I think there's usage of one of the heavy hitters. A couple bombs get dropped in here during some emotionally heightened scenes. So yeah, maybe just be on the lookout. Again, I wouldn't recommend this to a kid or even like a young adult. This wasn't written for a young adult. And plus, I think if an early teen picked this up, they'd be lost anyway, most likely. But yeah, that's for the most part. There's not really a lot in here, but it is present. It's just sparse. So that's why I gave it a 4. Okay, so this leads me into category number 4, which is gratuitous inclusions. So gratuitous inclusions, this is diversity and inclusion for the sake of diversity and inclusion, not because it drives the plot forward or anything like that. This is just, hey, we have to have our token gay character, or we need to put some sort of virtue signaling in here about trans rights, or maybe we need to race swap somebody, or somebody shaming somebody else because of their race one way or the other, whatever. I'm going to give this a 0. It's not in here. And for those of you that watched my review of Empire of Silence, which is right here, then you know I struggled with that book with some of that stuff. But in this book, it's not in here. And not only is it not in here, I would argue that it is spoken out against in here a little bit. And from what I understand, it tends to be, Chris Verrocchio tends to be more spoken out against that type of thing as the story progresses. Now, it doesn't become the inverse of gratuitous inclusions, which is, I guess it would still be a gratuitous inclusion, but it would be him having to virtue signal to me either, where he's like, yeah, all this stuff is bad. It's like, I'm not here for that. I want to read a sci-fi story about, laser swords and aliens and that kind of space opera. So I don't want that in there really either. But I do know in this book, a lot of the more liberal people who have read this book or the series put it down. They stop here because there is some discussion about genetically modifying your body and how that goes against nature. You can obviously see where people would, jump all over that. But yeah, so for gratuitous inclusions, I'm gonna put this at a big fat goose egg. Category 5 is going to be dark themes. Now, for dark themes, just to reiterate, I also include heavy themes. So these are some heavy topics. These are the kind of things where you're like, I don't know if I should be reading this. Maybe it makes me feel uncomfortable. Sometimes this deals with certain types of assault, those kind of things. And so for dark themes, I'm going to put this at a 1. And that's me trying to be extra cautious with you guys. I would really probably put this at a 0. But the reason I'm putting it at a 1 is because there are some things that are discussed with the unborn. It's served up a little different. That's the best way I can describe it without going into spoilers. But I don't think there's really a whole lot heavy in here, unless you're talking about having to deal with like war. Maybe there's some PTSD type stuff that's in here, but really I didn't see anything that was not only dark, but I didn't even see anything that was really all that heavy in here. Now there were some definite shocking things that occurred here, but I don't think that they're going to weigh on my conscience. I don't think that I'm going to put this book down at the end of the night and have trouble sleeping over it. It's none of that kind of stuff. So that's why I put it at a 1, but really it's probably around a 0 for me for the most part, but just to be on the safe side, I put it at a 1. And so it's time for the final question, which is, would I recommend this book to a Christian? And the answer is absolutely I would. I absolutely would. It will be to a particular audience. I will say that 100%. If you love science fiction, fantasy, if you loved the old Star Wars movies, but you're looking for like a modern take, and maybe that's an egregious comparison maybe, but it does have some of those themes in here. But if you love that kind of space opera with maybe some fantastical elements, man, oh man, pick this book up. Now, I know a lot of people say, well, you have to struggle through Empire of Silence to get through this. I did. I struggled through Empire of Silence, but not because the writing was bad, and you guys know why. But after I understood the context, now let me just go ahead and tell you guys, this is shaping up to be one of my favorite series of all time, let alone this, just by reading book 2 as of right now, is my favorite science fiction series of all time. And if you want to know how much I love this book, not only is this the best book that I've read this month, this is the best book that I've read all year, and it's not even close. And this is going to be one of my favorite books of all time. This book was that good. It was that good. It was so good. It's one of those books that when you finish reading it, when you put it down, that you have that, what they call book hangover, where I didn't want to pick another book up for a couple of days because I just wanted to sit with and think about what I just read, what the story that I just experienced. It was that good. It was that profound of a story of these characters. It is truly masterful. I didn't find anything in this book that I didn't like. I thought this was a masterpiece. So stone me in the comments or whatever, especially those of you who are like, oh, you almost, you DNF'd book one like 3 times, and now book two is one of your favorite books of all time. Yes, absolutely it is. So for anybody that's on the fence about picking the series up, let me just go ahead and tell you, this book has made the whole thing worth it. This book has made the whole struggle worth it. This book is just, man, it is so good. Now, if you want me to try to find a gripe with this book at all, it's going to be with this cover. And it's not even because I don't like the cover, because I love this cover, but it's because I don't think this was an accurate description of the character that it represents. The Broken Binding edition that I have back here, it is a much more accurate representation. And for those of you that know, but I mean, that's literally the only nitpick I can have, is that the cover art doesn't match exactly how he described it in the book. That should tell you something. So would I recommend this to a Christian? Absolutely. I'm going to be recommending this to everybody. It is so good. It is so good. So yeah, super good book. And I think, I definitely won't be able to, but I think somebody could read this book and kind of be okay. No, never mind. Scratch that. If you read this book, you're going to read Demon in White. It is taking everything within my power to not jump into book 3. And it's because I have a stacked list on my TBR this month. But I'm probably going to jump into book 3 in the next couple of weeks, or before the month is out. I know for sure, because I just can't wait to get into the next book. So guys, overall, I absolutely loved this book. And I know that hasn't really happened all that much on this channel this year. Unfortunately, the year that I start YouTube, that a lot of the books I've read, I've been unsatisfied with. Not so with this one. This book is excellent. So guys, if you've read this book, let me know down below. If you guys are still on the fence, or if you guys have any questions about the book or the series, or maybe you're still unsure about some things, you're like, my conscience is maybe a little more burdened with these other things, leave me a message down below. I'm happy to respond to you. I'm happy to try to answer any questions you may have. Yeah, just leave me a message down below, or you can message me at my email if you want it more private, whatever. Just let me know, and I'm happy to talk to you guys, which hopefully you all know. But yes, I cannot champion Howling Dark enough. Such a phenomenal book, such a phenomenal story so far. So thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out with me and listening to me ramble on about Howling Dark, just like everybody else on YouTube right now. It was phenomenal. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and sticking with me and listening to me ramble. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I'll see you on the next one.